Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck tech video. Today I'm still catching up with some of my more fun and casual temporary EDH decks. This is my current Colorless deck. It is the continuation from the previously recorded Thopter deck, Hopo Gearper. In short, there's really no Colorless combat-centric, cheap, aggro-ish, Voltron-ish commanders that are good in the EDH format. Hope of Gearper is essentially a 1 for a 1/1 flyer, which is adequate with swords, but not always good enough. So, in my play group, I've been given consent to play Masticore as a commander. This is not a legal commander, he's not legendary. But essentially it's just something that my playgroup is allowing me to do, because this is not a broken card. It is an efficient attacker, not overly expensive, and it doesn't just die to something like a Staffinen. So I have the Masticore. There's actually multiple commanders I may choose from, because I have the Masticore, or the Masticore, or the Razormane Masticore, or the Molten Tail Masticore. There are 3 Masticores printed to date, Masticores being an artifact version of a Manticore, and this one is the original. And I just shuffle them up and let an opponent pick at random which one I play. This was also temporarily piloted by Dragon Engine, the 3 mana 1/3, pay 2 to give it +1 to know, as a temporary cutesy commander, because Ramos was printed, and I wanted Mishra's version of Ramos as a commander. He was bad. So we have Masticore as the primary commander of the deck. This is a 4 mana 4/4 artifact creature. It used to be an old bomb. It essentially has a pay 2 to do a damage to a creature and pay 2 to regenerate. Every upkeep, although I have to discard a card, otherwise I sacrifice them. There's one trick in the deck to help with that, but in short, it's a 4 for 4/4 that may do stuff. Feeling if you give it Death Touch, Regenerator is okay. This is essentially a From the Vaults variant of this, which, fantastic artwork. The nostalgic artwork and the awesome artwork, both very good. Razormane Masticore is 5 for 5/5 first strike, usually strictly better than the 4 for the 4/4, no combat triggered abilities. Still have to discard, but I can also have it do 3 damage to a creature. And then the last one is the Molten Tail Masticore, essentially something that requires stuff in my graveyard, wanting me to discard earlier. And he still has that regeneration, which is actually pretty good. Power level wise, this is probably the best one, but I actually almost always prefer to run Masticore, as it's a old man magic card. Now, this is essentially a good stuff colorless deck in the fact that it's a variant of Voltron and aggro and big mana. It's literally just the best that a colorless deck can try to do without plugging combos into the deck. So, we have a bunch of weenie creatures that build up to big creatures. We have a Plague Mirror. In fact, it's not intentional, it's more or less a mana dork. Mirror Retriever and a Scrap Trawler for some artifact recursion, both very good cards. We have a Junk Diver. I just had a fun version of this. When it dies, it does what Mirror Retriever does. I can pick up an artifact to my hand. Matter Reshaper is a very fun card in Kiki Chiki. It's essentially a 3 mana that when it dies, I get the top deck of my card or my library. It's either going to go in my hand or if it's 3-drop or less, it's in play. We have Etched Champion. He's almost always going to have Metalcraft since my entire deck is mostly artifact based. We have Burnished Heart because this can get wastes. Pilgrim's Eye because it can get wastes. And Solemn Simulacrum because he can get a waste. Very important. There's a lot of ways of ramping lands into play when you don't have green, but these guys actually get wastes, which is pretty helpful. Treasure Keeper is a kind of a semi-cascade-ish thing. When it dies, I can reveal till I get a free 3-drop. And then we have essentially the big beaters of the deck. We have essentially what you would expect for a good stuff colorless deck. We have the Wormcore, a duplicate. Soul of New Phyrexia is a way of giving everything indestructible, which is very fantastic. A lot of people just, it's not the best of cards, but it is a card that is frequently forgotten about sitting in the graveyard, and 5 mana to save your board is pretty good. Metalwork Colossus is funny in this deck. This is here mainly because I was playing this in Standard for a whopping week from the Fling Colossus deck, and I had a fun one to put in here, simply because he can come out and he's just absurdly cheap. It's fantastic. Blightsteel is something that is, again, in fact, is not intentional. He's more or less here just to try to bait out removal. Then we have a bunch of Eldrazi. We have Waste, so I can utilize all of Endbringer's abilities. We have a Reality Smasher for some haste and trample. The body is actually nice. Oblivion Sower, I like the pre-release one here instead of the dual deck artwork more. Essentially a way of just getting some extra lands, a generic 6-drop Eldrazi. We have a 7-drop with the pseudo Exile / Annihilator. Artisan for a little bit of recursion reanimation. Again, sometimes I can't always pay to keep the Masticore around, and this is my one way of reanimating him. We have a Void Winnower, just if you can't read Russian. It says opponents can't play odd spells. 0 mana cost spells are considered odd. Or, I'm sorry, even. You can't cast even spells. You also can't block with even tokens. Even creatures' tokens being even. You have a Pathraiser for more Annihilator. We have, of course, the big legendary ones, all except the new Kozilek, which isn't always ideal. One that exiles, one that draws, and one that destroys, my favorite. Then we have essentially just a bunch of equipment to go along with these. We have 10 equipment, 2 shroud giving or hexproof giving effects. These are fantastic. Then, of course, we have ways of getting more wastes into play, essentially a nice way of getting card advantage slowly over a game. Warhammers for lifelink, giving trample to one of our Masticores is fantastic. Sword of Vengeance, first strike on the Masticore is fantastic. Salt Suit, this is the funny one. This is actually something that can negate the upkeep triggered effect of the Masticore, because I can't sacrifice it. And that simply just means I don't have to discard cards to the ability. So, I mean, it's great. I can tack this onto my Masticore and have everyone dancing around with a 6/6 Masticore and utilize his burn ability. Or I can just use this to make sure people don't, or I don't have to discard yeah. We have a Batterskull because I don't have the Swords of X and Y in this deck, but this is one of my favorite equipments. And then I'm actually running the 3 Cauldron pieces in here for casual, nonsensical reasons. There's really no good reason to run any of these. Yes, I can use the sword and a Masticore's triggered ability to exile a creature. Obviously, the more optimal plays would be to just run Basilisk Collar or Gorgon's Head, some way of giving the Masticore Death Touch. But this is a more laid-back deck. I mean, this is not a combo deck. We're playing Colorless, good stuff. It's not going to be the most optimal and powerful of decks. So I'm playing with the fun, make the Cauldron happen thing. There's, of course, a bunch of mana rocks. The one thing Colorless decks can do is always have a bunch of extra mana rocks, because that's really all we can do. So we have, I think, 13 or 14. We have Mana Crypt. This was here. I'm thinking about taking it out. Again, I had Dragon Engine as the original commander of the deck, a 3-drop 1/3. So this was predominantly there so I can get that out on turn 1. This helps, of course, get Masticore on turn 2. We have ways of getting more waste into play. A Soul Ring for obvious reasons, Mind Stone, Thought Vessel, a Guardian Idol. This is a fun little come-to-play tap rock that I can attach some equipment to later. And of course, that's just a Darksteel thing. Comes to play tapped. Of course, this one is always an awkward one. I do like the fact that it taps for 2, but it's a 4-drop, which makes it just bad compared to something like Worn Power Stone. The only good thing here is this deck does tend to shit out a bunch of mana rocks, but not actually have the lands to play for every turn. So I can at least use the lands that I paid this for to then play my land for turn by bouncing one. Then we have the Hedron Archive, which is essentially a strict upgrade. The Thrawn Dynamo, and a Gilded Lotus, and a Dreamstone Hedron. Again, this is just not good cards anymore, something basically limited to just giant Colorless Eldrazi decks. Let's go on. There's a few utility artifacts left. Mirage Mirror, as Stephen Green likes to call it, Magic Mirror. This is a phenomenal card. It can become multiple things. You can activate its ability in response to its own ability, so you can make this become a land, tap it for mana, and then have the next thing resolved, becoming something else. The utility behind this card is absurd. The fact that it can become any creature or equipment on the battlefield, just gross. Mimic Vat, this is again a leftover from when I was playing with Hope of Gyreper, but this is just generically a good utility card. We have the Oracle's Vault. Again, this is kind of a fun interactive. It can be good if it's left alone, and it does actually combo with something coming up, quote-unquote combo. But this is just a pseudo card advantage. I'm going to set this up here for a second. Mind's Eye for more somewhat card advantage. Staff and In for an extra draw a turn. Planar Bridge. which can just put any permanent from my entire deck straight into play, which is fantastic. We have a Chroma's Memorial, again giving the Masticore all those fun abilities. It is basically how the deck is trying to win. We have a Darksteel Forge, because almost every permanent in this deck, except for a few Eldrazi and an enchantment, are into artifacts. So, and that's a handful of spells. Next, we have, there's a handful of more that you can actually run here, but then you can load up your deck with a bunch of colorless spells, like the Devoid spells, but they're really not that good. So essentially, I'm even thinking about taking this one out. The Whimsical Counter Sorcery, or exile a 1 toughness creature. It's just not good enough. All is Dust, although, is definitely worth its keep. This is the one thing that's like a one-sided wrath against everything. We have a 7 mana instant exile a permanent. This is the crap that we get to deal with in Colorless decks. And of course, putting this on our commander, or something interesting like a Junk Diver, it's just great. And of course we have Ooge, and there of course could be Karn in the deck. It is currently being used in a different deck, but ideally you want Karn and Ooge both in your Colorless decks. And past that, we have a giant stack of lands. There are 38 lands total in this deck. We have the ones that like to make extra mana fast, like Ancient Tomb. Temple of the False God isn't exactly fast, this isn't actually the best of cards for EDH, in my opinion, but in this type of deck, it's more casual and laid back. I'm not going to be doing anything super aggressive too early in the game, so it's perfectly fine here. Scorched Ruins is actually one of my favorite cards in Colorless. I don't remember if this was in the Hope deck or not, but I mean, at the cost of 2 lands, I get a land that taps for 4. And you know what's better than having a land that taps for 4? Is making copies of the land that taps for 4. So you can have 3 lands that tap for 4 mana each. It's like you're playing Urzatron almost, or now we have a bunch of utility lands. That is one of the good things about the recent 2 years for Colorless EDH, is the number of lands that tap for colorless mana has just greatly gone up. Not even the fact that they've included wastes, but every set now is giving us a plethora of new toys. So we have essentially a way of rebuying some creatures. This is a recreation of an older card that did not tap for mana. I think it was from like Tempest maybe, I don't remember. Then we have Rogue's Passage, which just gives our commander unblockable. An Inventor's Fair, which is a fantastic tool to help tutor up an important piece. Like if I need an equipment, if I'm trying to go for the Cauldron setup, if I just want some card advantage, something passive, even like the Sword of the Animist, you want to get it. Reliquary Tower for not real reason, it's just an untapped colorless land. This is Gemstone Cavern. It is a land that essentially is in your opening hand and you're not playing first. You may discard a card and put this into play for free. Exile a card? Discard? I don't remember. This is in Russian, so I don't remember exactly. Of course, I can just pull up my Legacy deck and check, but it just is another tap for colorless land, or it could be land number 2 on my first turn. A charge land, a indestructible land, a Scavenger Grounds. This is probably the best new card for colorless decks to date, simply because it is an instant speed exile all graveyards effect. So good card. We have a draw and discard for everybody. We have a High Market, so I can sack a creature. Especially this is good if you're running a bunch of Eldrazi, when you know people try to blatant thievery or mind control them, you can just sack them. Dunes of the Dead is here basically just in case I decide to wasteland my own land, I guess? I don't know. It's a generic, comes into play untapped, colorless land. Buried Rune is to help recur. We have Ink Moth, because I have a fair number of equipments in here, so I guess I could really build up Infect. I mean, this is the 3rd Infect card in the deck. We have a Wasteland. I don't know if Strip Mine's in here anymore. This is usually morphed out just to tease the opponents. Everyone knows what it is when they realize you're playing colorless. We have a Shrine of the Forsaken God, a whimsical variant of Temple of the False God. We have Ruins of Oran Reef. This is the colorless version of the green card that used to give counters on all green cards that enter or green creatures that enter the play this turn. This is basically just garbage. I mean, it's going to put a counter on my colorless creatures, like, an Eldrazi, all the difference if you have a counter on it, whatever. Blink Moth Nexus for more random creature lands. A Phyrexian Core to sack more stuff. Cathedral of War. This is again left over when I was playing with Hope of Gyreper. Just a tap land. This could probably be replaced. I think Strip Mine wasn't here, and if I put Strip Mine back in, it would replace this. We have Terrain Generator because I can use this to poop out wastes if somehow I draw an excessive amount of cards. And then we have a bunch of wastes. I still have a giant stack of the artwork I like, but I actually did end up picking up the other artworks here. So, again, my curiosity, I always throw props to everyone in their artwork, but I feel like this is a gorgeous piece of artwork, and while this is also a very nice piece of artwork, it was awkward for development to put both of these in the set together when one of them stands out far better than the other. I kind of wish that they would not have done that. If anything, they should have made like something like this a full art and this the normal variant, made this a more limited card and all prints and this in every pack. Whatever. It's our decision. But this is my Masticore deck. So again, this is highly casual. The legendary creature here, Masticore, is not legendary in any way, shape, or form, so this is not technically a legal commander deck, but obviously this is not a broken commander. It's just the fact that there are no combat-centric, early, basic, based artifact creatures that I can run. My previous deck was Hopogyarper, but the real commander of that deck was Toy Boat. It was a 3-mana 3/3 with no relevant abilities that I almost always had to sacrifice myself. And a 3-mana 3/3 was better than Hopogyarper in most games because it's just a more relevant creature. And unfortunately, there's not any colorless creatures that can attack efficiently. Like, when you think of Karn Silver Golem, I mean, he can't even get damage through if he blocks. So, my group understands my desires to play things like this, and they understand that this is not overpowered, so I have been given consent to play Masticores in EDH. So, if you guys have any feedback or enjoy the idea of this casual jank shit, definitely let me know. I actually like my colorless deck. This is probably going to be the commanders I run. We're just randomly choosing the one to play per game until something actually legal comes by. But at the same time, I mean, I remember playing Masticore back in the day, so this is pretty cool. But as always, any opinions or ideas, let me know. Thanks.